What's up, everybody? This is Sean from Easy Street Billiards. Just walk around to the front here. Today's topic of discussion for myself is, and of course, if anybody has anything that they'd like me to talk about instead of just things that I think about talking about, feel free to make a comment below. You can join our school group.
I will pin it.
Which will be a pinned comment. That's a community-driven group that we've created for Easy Street Billiards. Just as because we love pool and we want it to grow, we want to facilitate people getting better at pool and life and other things.
Okay.
Pardon the noise. It's the dog just rampaging in here. All right, back to the topic at hand. Today's topic is change is the only constant. I think it seems to me as though, and I've definitely been guilty of this myself, is that you feel like, oh, I'm working on this thing, and once I get it locked in, then I'm going to be good to go. And that sometimes you feel like, oh, I have everything figured out. And then the next day you come back and you're like, dang, I just can't quite remember, or it just doesn't feel the same. I don't have the same, secret sauce that I had yesterday. And then we're trying to rediscover the thing that made us play well, or the thing that we figured out, the aha moment. And I think that as we get older, we realize that the only thing that does not change is the fact that everything does change, and that is the constant. And in order to work with that, that's how you can continue to grow and evolve and improve your game, is knowing that tomorrow is a new day. You're going to be a new person in a lot of different ways. The things that you do today will make or break you for tomorrow. Over the long term, each day is an accumulation of things that you do, habits that you exhibit, and expressions of yourself, and modifying and improving those behaviors is how you get better at pool and better at life. And that's what we're going to talk about, is just embracing, so to speak, change as being a thing that can't be removed from the life equation. I think that if you look at human beings being living organisms, all living organisms have one purpose, is just to be alive and to continue to grow as long as possible, because as soon as they stop growing, then now the process of decay and death begins. And even though with humans are on this planet for however long, our bodies may not continue to grow as we get older. However, our mental processes continue to evolve if we work towards that. Our spiritual growth, our ability to understand what's going on around us and have more control over our environment increases over time if we continue to build skills. And I think that with pool, one of the great things to do is just to have an intent for each session, each shot ideally, where you're going to try to look at things a little bit more deeply and expand your understanding of what you're doing and make changes, specifically because it's going to be required of you. If you wake up tomorrow and maybe you're a little bit sore but you still want to hit balls, you may be a little bit more ginger and you might not be posted quite as solidly as you were the day before, and that's going to require you then to adapt and modify your stance, so to speak. Or if you're working on your stroke, each stroke that you perform is an accumulation towards something that is more repeatable, but the repeatability itself is part of the change of it, where at the beginning you have inconsistency, You can't repeat your stroke. And then as you continue to work on fine tuning the motion, however you do it, maybe you do piston stroke, pendulum stroke, pump, whatever you do, it will continue to evolve over time, regardless of whether or not you yourself are actively working towards that or not. But I urge everyone to spend a little bit more energy realizing that everything is changing and in constant flux and flow, and that if you yourself want to be in flow, you have to accept the fact that that's what's going on and be okay and just surrender to it. Embrace the change, embrace the newness that is there, the thing that you're not quite sure about, that you suspect may be true, is what you should be searching for, and to find those truths in your own game. And those things are the things that you can use to build on, and that foundation continues to grow and then become more solid over time if you find the small little things that don't really change that you can use to build on, meaning that the laws of physics are set as far as I know, and that we are discovering new ways to incorporate those laws and the laws of this world into how we are doing things through all the different ways that human beings work to progress. And with pool, the technology is evolving over time, and that's allowed us to then evolve the way we swing the cue. The equipment has changed what's required, and we're adapting to those new conditions, the new rules, all those things all the time. And that one of the things that's really important is to get comfortable understanding that you're never going to be completely solid in knowing that you don't need to change. You're never going to not need to change, because tomorrow you're going to wake up one day older than you did today, and that is a slight amount of change, and it may not be noticeable over the course of a week or 2 weeks, but if you start on a weight loss program, you'll see that you can affect permanent change to your life through adopting a couple small habits, which become long-lasting lifestyle changes if you continue to work towards that. And then you can use those to build on something else. And that's how pool is that it's at the beginning, you starting with, everything is changing so much that you're unused to it. And that's where it gets weird, is after a while you start getting comfortable with what you're doing, and then you kind of get to where you feel like that's how it's supposed to be forever, where it's like, oh, once I get comfortable with this and I'll have it locked in, then I'm just going to add that one thing to my game, and that will make it all perfect, and that I won't have to progress. I'm satisfied with the way that things are, and I'm just going to sit back and let things go, not realizing that it's like, well, as you build one skill, say you're working on your jump shot, for instance, now when you're competing and you're jumping more often than you would otherwise, that means that you're kicking less often, if that makes sense. So now what you're doing is you're increasing your skill in a particular adaptation required to accomplish pull shots, and then you're not utilizing another skill that you were using in its place, and then thus the change of your kicking game is a negative potentially, because now your jumping is getting better. You've been prioritizing that, and that's how everything is that if you're working on your position play, it's very natural that your shot making will suffer early on, because instead of focusing purely on making the ball, you're now focusing on a new thing. You're trying to modify where your cue ball goes after contact, and that changes the way you have to view the game itself. And your priority system has to change and evolve, and that's how it goes. Everything is like that. You can, anything that you just keep doing, you will get better at. But that's the thing, is that it doesn't give you balance, which is what you really need to be a great pool player, to continue to get better. Really, you're not trying to get better at things you're already good at. What you really need to do to get better is to create balance in your game, so that every single situation that you approach the table, something that can help you succeed. And early on, you don't have those tools, and that you need to work towards gaining those tools. And then once you have, a little bit of a goodie bag that you can pull out from, then you start to have your own game. And then from there, you can really start to plan, okay, what do I want my game to look like? And really focus on intending for certain things to happen to you through your own efforts. Say you want to become a champion. Well, in order for you to become a champion, you have to adopt the habits of a champion. Now, if you're already playing 4 to 5 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, you've got that part potentially down. I don't know exactly how many hours the pros play. I'm sure it varies, but I would say that a good measurement to start with is a full-time job's worth of time at the table, hitting balls, preparing for tournaments, playing in tournaments, traveling to tournaments, getting in gambling matches if that's what you like to do, although not necessary. Anything that gets you to try hard and to work towards understanding what the true percentages of a win-loss is what matters, and that developing skills through playing against better players that beat you and that teach you where you're weak. Because anyone that is better than you will be able to exploit all your weaknesses without you really being able to do anything about it. That's just how it works. You don't necessarily just run somebody over, and it doesn't matter what strategy they employ. Obviously, that's what the highest level of pool is that you're just constantly trying to play perfect, obviously, which is what you do anytime. However, at lower levels of pool, if I'm playing against a player that is not at my skill level with, the moving game and defensively, then I can easily use my moving knowledge and experience to put them in more situations that they're uncomfortable with. They may want to shoot aggressively every single time, but it may not be possible to win at that moment with that strategy, and that all I have to do then is just sit back and use my skill set that I've developed over time to maximize my win percentage without having to exert more effort, so that later on in a tournament or a competition scenario, I have more energy available to use against the top players in the area, in the room that I'm competing against, and that I'm going to then use all my tricks to survive against those players, and that they are doing the same thing in general. As you get older, you start realizing that part of the game is about energy conservation. So part of the growth of your game should be streamlining and creating more routine scenarios for yourself so that you can automate what's going on in your brain and leave yourself more energy to make clear, more decisive decisions when there are bigger distractions, larger situations that for you as a lower player, this would be an example of kind of the way the hierarchy of it is that at the beginning you're just trying to make the ball, and then as you start getting better, then you start playing routine shape, and then now you start running 3, 4, 5, 6 balls, and now you may start struggling, with executing at the end because you're growing and you're not as confident. But a lot of that's just because you haven't repeated it. Once you start making that 9 in key situations, because you keep putting yourself in that situation, then you'll realize, oh, okay, I can do that, and then you just be like, okay, what's next, and then so on and so forth. But the whole point of this, is just to realize that the growth and the change is inherent in all of it, and that regardless of whether or not you're trying to improve actively, you are changing. And that my opinion is, and I think that this would be a good principle to kind of think about, at least if you're not expressly just going after it, is to realize that, okay, well, I am changing no matter what I want to have happen. I need to accept that, and then I need to move forward understanding that change is happening, and that, by creating a mindset where you're seeing the change is happening and trying to guide where your changes are happening, then now it opens the door to like a little bit more freedom and having a little bit more fun with it, knowing that you're going to evolve and adapt anyways. That if you just focus on the things that you don't like all the time, you're just going to create more of those things for yourself, and that if you're looking to improve, then you need to be looking for things that are going to help you improve. But a lot of that stuff is a little bit deeper than people think. It's not, it's like on the surface, you're like, oh, I admire XYZ player's strokes, so I'm going to work towards that. That's great. You know, the thing is that might not be the thing that's holding you back. It might just be your attitude towards things, where you don't realize that the way that you use your language and the way that your thoughts are and the way that you feel when you're competing needs to be adjusted and modified and improved so that you can have more successful results without having so much, you know, inflicting self-harm on yourself by, you know, for instance, just like missing easy balls that you should make. You know, if you're technically proficient enough to make a ball a high percentage of the time, we're not going to say 100%. I think it's easy to see that even great players miss shots that you'd be very surprised about, and they miss those shots routinely in certain types of situations, meaning every shot's missable in the right scenario, and that to say I should make it all the time is pretty much always going to be false. There's always going to be reasons and things that are going on that make things more difficult, and that's part of how it goes, is that you can't tell yourself I'm supposed to make this ball and then have that be like how it goes. It doesn't, just because you tell yourself I'm supposed to make it doesn't mean it will go. I think that as you develop a process that you can rely on, now you understand it's like, okay, my best process is, you know, steps 1 through 5, and then as long as I stick to those 5 steps in a row, then that's going to be better than this other process that I might consider that has 8 steps in it, that 1 or 2 of the steps maybe are a little bit extra or they're not as beneficial. But I've compared the 2, and I feel like this is the one that is going to give me the best results in general. And specifically, maybe in other scenarios I might have to do some adaptations, but a lot of that has to do with using your mind to decide, oh, okay, weighing this and that versus each other, and then deciding, well, if I just commit to this one, it's a simpler process. Then through, you know, repeated actions, I can develop it more strongly, more consistently, and memorize it, and then get automated with it. And then part of that will then require you to realize that it must change over time and evolve, and ideally get simpler and more effective at the same time, more efficient at the same time. And then a quest for, like I said, as you get older, you don't want things to be more complicated and more difficult and more energy and more work. That's the opposite of what you're looking for. I think when you're younger, you get fascinated by these complex systems, and then you try to, you know, you just add, and then you think that that's the sauce, but you don't realize that every time you add something, you're creating a situation where you need to put more energy into it to keep it alive, and that you only have so much actual energy to provide to the system before it starts to break you down, and that over time your growth opportunity really is simplifying your life, simplifying your game, so that there's less distractions that you created for yourself to have to figure out, okay, if I'm, you know, I need to have a certain stroke timing in order to, you know, or, you know, a certain number of pre-strokes, you know, and all that stuff is like, well, there's no reason to have, you know, be down there for 26 pre-strokes or 30 pre-strokes. It's not doing anything. You should have just, in your mind, figure out a way to do a few, you know, less is more, so to speak, you know, and that I think at the beginning of your game, you're adding things because you don't know what all is going to work, and you're kind of like, oh, this worked and that worked, and then as you get better, you start to realize that, okay, it's not really all those things. It was just I needed those things, those details at that time. But then as soon as I start to move beyond needing them, I need to see that I need to release them so that I can then take that energy that I'm using to keep it alive and focus it on something that's more fundamentally helpful, if that makes sense. Do we have anybody on? Any comments?
No comments, but there's people.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. I don't know that I have too much more to say about this. I think that a lot of it is pretty obvious in that it's more about raising awareness to concepts that are a little bit more fundamental, is kind of my hope for everyone, is to really think deeply about, okay, well, if I am changing day to day, and that I'm playing pool, quite often enough, consistently enough to make actual improvements to your game, then now focusing on recognizing opportunities for growth and opportunities for change becomes the whole game, where the shots themselves are simple as far as once you've chosen a pattern or a layout, and now you have a shot that requires bottom spin with a little bit of right English and then a certain amount of power, you realize that the physics has actually already been solved. I just have to get more comfortable understanding on this table how the reaction off the rail is, for instance, so that when I'm playing position off the rail or I'm banking a ball off the rail, that I know how this is going to be, and that's an experiential thing. You can use your knowledge of geometry and physics to try to work towards gaining some sort of relative mastery, so you don't have to work so hard and do all the calculations in your mind. And then that's just through repeatability. You practice, practice, practice. You get better at that skill, then you give up on it for a while because you realize, okay, there's other things that I need to work on that are going to help my game more than getting a little bit better at this. And that you realize, okay, over time, you come back to those things. It's a spiral where you're just constantly like attacking it from the outside, and you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's what you do, is that there's only so many things to work on with pool. And before you kind of figured out, okay, this three-dimensional universe portion of it is actually pretty static as far as the rules aren't changing. It's more about discovering how to manipulate your understanding of what's going on to make things easier for you in the long run. And a lot of it has to do with creating more efficient systems, more so than adding specific things. It's about creating a uniform system that you can use for most of your shots, and then you modify slightly for other things like elevating over a ball, jump shots. You don't want to be using like totally different technique for every single thing that you do, because that creates too many different things to work on. And by simplifying it down and finding, okay, what is my base case fundamental system, and then evolve it to be able to incorporate more different things without having to make major changes to it, major modifications in the moment. So then you can kind of be more comfortable because you're working with something that's more of a framework versus having individual little things that you're doing. It gets to be part of that thing for me. I don't really work towards understanding the game better. I'm trying to understand myself better so that the decisions that I make me feel better about what I'm doing, not so much the actual execution of the thing, but just the deciding that this is what I'm going to do today is huge for your mental game. It's like, well, it's not so much whether or not I win or lose a certain match or make or miss a certain ball. It's, for me, my evolution is more about committing, making good decisions and being clear with my decisions, knowing that once you've achieved a certain consistency with your stroke, repeatability with your stroke, then now your decisions have to be more clear so that you can then use how repeatable your stroke is to your advantage versus wondering, am I making the right decision? Once you realize there's no correct decision, it's all about what you're doing is what matters. You are going to make different decisions than every other player. Some will be closely the same. I mean, most of the simpler games, there's not much to do, but the position itself doesn't have to necessarily be exact. If you're a little bit shorter, a little bit taller, you can play for different spots, or you're forced to play for different spots, and that's your personal thing. But understanding that for yourself is huge. Like, I can play a little bit left-handed, so I don't worry about leaving myself a little bit tough for a right-handed player. I can play a left-handed shot and be pretty consistent with that, and that's an adaptation that I've developed. Do we have a comment?
Yeah, Mike McGee. He says,
Right.
what changes are imperative when playing doubles?
When playing doubles, this is a good question.
You want to repeat the question?
I think that if you approach every single shot as a new event, as a new inning, and you are able to release any sort of judgments at all And this would be something that you can make consistent with your own game and when you're playing doubles, is that you're relying on your partner more than you're relying on yourself in a way, because if your partner plays poorly and you play great, you're going to lose. So it's not really about yourself. It becomes about supporting your partner. So if you're too into your own thing and you need to have things a certain way so that you can be comfortable, you're taking away in general your capacity to help your partner play well, because your partner is not you, and the things that trigger you will not necessarily trigger them, and vice versa. And that the worst thing that can happen when you're playing in a match is trigger your partner, because that's how you basically shoot your own foot. That's the easiest way to lose, is to make it to where your partner is uncomfortable, and also yourself, if that makes sense. It's a lot of it's a knowledge of self. Is like I'm capable of facilitating my partner's play through having a wide array of different methods that I can play, that some of which will enhance my partner's ability to win, and some of which will make it harder for my partner to play well, if that makes sense. As a better player typically than my partners have been in the past. I can't remember the last time I played as the lower rated player or the lesser skilled player on my team. My whole focus is trying to understand what sort of personality and what sort of game do I need to bring with me, so that when my partner is in a match and competing, and we're competing together as a team, how do I need to behave to maximize my partner's play? And with that being said, is also then you yourself have to be able to play at a high level with that, with that being the highest value, is that it's not about me playing well, and this is from me being the better player on my team typically. If I play my game, it's fine, but if my partner plays poorly, then it's over. And that it's more about understanding what I need to do to make my partner play well, to give my partner the opportunity to play well. If my partner is for instance, a lot shorter than me or taller than me, which is typical. I mean, I'm not a particularly tall man, but I do have a long bridge, and I have an extension that I can use, and I can play left-handed, so I have the capacity to reach a lot of shots that most people that are my height cannot reach as easily as I can, and that I'm able to modify my position plays to facilitate my partner being successful, knowing that it's not really the ideal shot for myself, but it's the ideal shot for my partner. And then by understanding what strokes they have, what their game looks like as far as offensively and defensively, and working with what their comfort is, and understanding that by analyzing their game, and then playing a game that's complementary, so to speak, and using a complementary type personality, where I think that one of the things that's difficult about partners play, especially at lower levels, is the emotionality that comes with competing and having very little control of what's going on. When you're one of four players in a match, any one of the four players can throw everyone off just through their own behaviors. And really looking at the dynamic of the person to person, the social interactions that are going on, and making sure that you're out of the way when you're a partner and you are playing well. You need to be able to just let it happen and don't force things. You just have to be like, oh, okay, how can I make my partner be in that happy place, whatever place it is that they are when they're playing their best pool, because it's not the same for everyone. Some people have to get that little bit of, something going on before they start playing good. They start getting serious, like, oh, it's actually time to do it now. We were just messing around before that, and it's hard to get that seriousness out of someone when you're joking around. However, if they're maybe a little bit down on themselves, then now maybe a little bit of that releasing pressure sort of activity is now it's time for that, and that's part of you have to just be kind of outside of your own like garbage that you're dealing with for yourself and be above that and be like, it's not about me and what I feel like I need right now, it's about what my partner needs. And then if I can facilitate my partner's play through my own play, my own style of play, my own style of being, my own way that I'm exhibiting my personality, my expressions, then I can help the team as much as possible. And there's a lot that goes into that, and I think that practicing playing doubles play is probably the best thing, but it can't be just messing around, because the thing about it is that when you're competing and there's something at stake, it's a totally different thing than just hitting balls with your partner, and there not being anything in because then you can take shots you wouldn't have taken, and that you need to simulate the actual environment as best you can, so that then you know exactly what your partner is going to do in different situations, versus when you're practicing, you're actually, most of the time, they're not going to do the same thing when they're practicing as they will when they are competing. At least that's my opinion. Maybe some shots are clearly obvious that that's what you have to do. However, in key situations, you'll see that you and your partner will both do things that you're surprised about. In practice, it's more about working on different skill sets, in my opinion. When I'm practicing, I'm working on different skills. I'm not necessarily trying to win, so to speak, but when you're competing, the goal is to win. It's not necessarily to get better at that moment through working on different things. It's not about that so much. It's a different focus, a different goal. So as long as you're keeping as open inside yourself and see, look for that little advantage that you can provide your partner, that little extra comfort, that little extra ability to execute, and make that your priority, and then that will then develop your own game to where then now you're actually developing. What I would say the best thing to explain it is that when I'm playing with my partner, what I'm trying to do is play exactly the same way that they play, but better. I'm trying to show them how they can play a little bit better than they already play, but the same style of play that they're using, or take an element that they don't have in their game and use that to help win and demonstrate the lack of balance, so to speak. That if you had a balanced game where it's like not just you shooting defensively the whole time and I'm the one that's having to go for it when it's time, and then now you're not comfortable going for it, or the other way around where they play aggressively all the time, and then now when it's time to play safe and it's not your turn, they don't know what to do, and now you're like, you can't do anything. You're just going to sit there and hope that they shoot the right shot, and that if they don't see it because of they're either compromised or their skill set doesn't have that element in it, there's really not much to be done. But at the same time, like I said, it's, as long as you're going down the way that the way that you want to, where you at least know what you're doing, then you can help your partner at least through just being like, well, we're going in there, we're giving our best opportunity, and the thing that I would say as well is that the words that you use while you're playing doubles are more important than probably anything else, because your partner will hear everything that you say, and they're going to judge it most likely through their own lens, and understanding that anything that you say that can be judged against you probably will be in a lot of different scenarios. So it's more beneficial to try to be as open to not saying as much, and to just be like playing like one person, if that makes sense. You don't talk to yourself while you're playing pool. You don't have to talk to your partner either. Now, if there's like a lot of coaching that needs to happen, that's one thing, but I wouldn't say that you want to be overly complicated. If you're an overthinker, then you're going to see 20 different shots, but only one of them is going to be the right shot, and the challenge then would be to just only express the thing that you think is best to do at that moment, and that has more to do with who your partner is than it has to do with who you are. I could go on forever about this. As far as like modifying your own behavior, I'd say the main takeaway that is that you got to understand is that no one's going to be really comfortable unless you're very experienced. If you start getting comfortable, then that's a blessing, and you should be happy that that's happening, because it's rare, and that every match that you win could be just like a battle. to the death, where it's like it might go down to where, both teams are really playing poorly, and that now it's just a matter of the first person to figure it out for their team is the one that unlocks the win. And it's just about staying super tough and being available to be, no matter what the scenario is, it can turn around in a second. Doubles is, like I said, 4 players. If one player misses out of the blue and their partner really expected them to make that shot, it might throw their partner off and put their partner on tilt. Not even them. They might not even be on tilt. You got to see, it's like, well, if your partner misses a straight in ball, and this has happened to me, where I played in a BCA tournament with a doubles partner, that we got down and it was like a race to 4, and we were ahead 2-1, and then she missed a pretty routine shot to win that game to put us on the hill, and then she missed the shot, and then their team won that and went on to win the match, and then they ended up winning the tournament, and we were out in 3, but we had every opportunity we needed to win at that match, and that it was really difficult for me to just realize is that things happen, and that you don't have control of what your partner does, but you don't want to beat them up over it if they're already beating themselves up over it more often than not, because they feel like you're relying on them, which is true, and they're relying on you, which is true, but you need to be able to support each other by lifting each other up as much as possible, and that becomes a paramount thing. It's just, you don't want to ever say I'm sorry when you're playing doubles, because you don't want to apologize to yourself. You got to pretend that you're one unit. You do what you do. If you screwed up, then and you're saying I'm sorry, well, that means to me that's an explanation that you did something that you shouldn't have done, and now you're apologetic for it, and I don't think that has a place in pool. You do what you do. You can apologize if you want, but it's more about forgiving yourself than it is about being sorry. It's about correcting your mistakes. It's not about making mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You don't have to feel regret for making a mistake. The whole purpose for being out there is to make mistakes and learn from them, and that by increasing the consequence, the mental, emotional consequence, you're putting yourself in a greater likelihood of making mistakes than if you're just practicing. So I would say that the number one thing is if you feel like you're supposed to apologize, then you should be looking at what you're doing before that and be more conscious of making the actual clear choice, the choice the thing that you should do no matter what. Like, I'm okay with making a mistake, shooting this shot this way, and that I shouldn't have to feel any sort of remorse for missing it, because that was the best thing that I knew how to do at that time. And as long as you're using that as your highest value, is that I'm just going to shoot the best shot being the shot that gives us the highest percentage opportunity to win when you're playing in a match. It's not about making the ball. If you make the ball and you leave your opponent an impossible shot, you're going to lose the same way as you miss and leave it in the jaws, and then now the opponent just has to tap it in. It's the same thing. It's about winning and losing when you're playing these competitions, and anything you do to hurt the team decreases your chance to win. And so that's everything you should be doing, is trying to help the team. Now, if you're saying things that require your opponent, or not your opponent, but your partner, to have to deal with what you're saying, you're making it harder. That's not good. You don't want to do that. You want to make it easier for your opponent to be there with you, enjoying themselves, so that hopefully that is their happy place where they can play good pool and not be distracted by your responses, by your activities, by your expressions of your behaviors, and that I think that's pretty more of a mindset thing than it is like a physical thing. You have your game that you have. It's more about using it the best you can, and then not worrying so much about whether or not you're winning or losing. It's about, like I said, it's about the whole thing is juggling all of these different balls, and that you can't just in one day have it figured out. You have to be nice to your partner, but not so nice that they stop paying attention. You know what I mean? It's a seriousness where you're just like, I'm just here to be serious, try to win this, because I can't just mess around necessarily and win. My process doesn't allow for too much, like, you know, funness to it. It's more about the satisfaction of accomplishing a goal. That's where my enjoyment comes from. It's not so much about smiling while I'm shooting a shot. You know, you know, if that's how you are, it is how you are. You know, and that's great. If so, I just think it takes muscle energy to smile, so I don't do it, because that's something that I might focus on with the table. You know, use that energy for the table, so to speak. Is there anything else? Well, I think that's going to be it for today. Once again, change is constant, the only constant. Everything pretty much with life is change, and you have to embrace that. Focus on the changes that are happening while they're happening, and then you can modify the direction of that change, ideally to your benefit, in many, many different ways. And by focusing on the things that are underneath, the little changes that happen daily that accumulate into lifelong, you know, lifelong differences between being here and over here. Those are the big changes that you're really looking for, is to find what's really underneath the surface and modify those things to make everything easier for you over time. So anyways,
Mike says, no negative self-speak, embrace the four-way battle, knowing you'll have every opportunity to win, support and lift each other up, forgive without apologizing. Pick the shot that works best for your partner. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. You know, it's just so much of it is just like, you know, if I was on, you know, on my best behavior, how would I behave? And then that should just be always your behavior, truthfully. You know, but I think that when you're playing doubles, is particularly, it's important to be as consistent as you can and as positive as you can be without being so over the top with it. It throws your partner off. You don't want to have to be the guy that's be like, every time they miss, you're just like, oh, it's okay, you don't have to worry about that. You know, it's going to be like all the other things, and you start talking like a million miles an hour. Meanwhile, they're just like, I just want to be left alone so that I can cool myself off. I don't need to hear your whatever you're about to say. Whatever you're saying is extra and not necessary. That's not the kind of person that I need to have around me right now. What I need is a moment for myself to just calm myself down. You know, so and then you know, and stuff like that is, you need to know your partner and how they need to be treated in order for them to play the best. That's what it's all about. It's not just knowledge of yourself. It's knowledge of being able to be empathetic enough with your partner to know what they need at that moment and doing that thing. It doesn't matter what you want, because if you're trying to win by supporting your partner and not bringing them down, you're going to win more often. And that is the whole point of it. It's not just the game itself, but it's actually the social aspect of it is what throws people off. You know, if you're equally rated team to your opponent's team, there's no reason why they should win or you should win, when it's all going to be about the cohesiveness of the team. Okay, well, thanks a lot, everybody. We're having a great day, and we'll see you next time.